This article is my first talk based on a new article published last week, principally about the Italian iframes industry, but also the international premium iframes market more broadly and its intersection with the emerging consumer smart glasses market. So the article is quite long. The copy deck was 40 typewritten pages before adding images. So we'll see how that translates into a 15-minute talk. For those who read my blog, Gigantico, I'm probably more known for tracking developments in near-eye display tech and covering both technical and business perspective. But for those who follow me on Twitter, where I believe I derive most of my traffic, I also extensively cover the premium iframes industry. It's probably 2/3, 3/4 display tech and kind of quarter-ish fashion iframes market. So it's not completely outside of my domain, but not typically covered on the blog. What if the real battle for consumer smart glasses is not taking place in Silicon Valley? It's an admittedly provocative proposition. You look at the competitive landscape. This is how most people in the tech industry view the market's landscape in smart glasses, typical expected players. Now, I've long since countered this conventional point of view with the proposition that the real battle will not be whether a prospective user purchases, say, Apple smart glasses versus Google smart glasses or Microsoft, whatnot, et cetera, but whether they choose smart glasses at all over continuing to wear conventional corrective vision glasses or sunglasses. The premium eyewear is a mature and growing, in fact, aggressively growing industry in its own right. To tell the story, I'm going to take a trip back into recent history. Okay, in the tech industry, the watershed date of April 15th, 2013 saw the introduction of Google Glass. So crystallizing the tech industry around the pursuit of the next logical human-machine paradigm, that smart glasses are inevitable. Across the pond, a completely different, unrelated set of events were also put into motion that have reconfigured the premium iframes industry. These two sets of unrelated events in different but adjacent industries have unfolded in near choreographed tandem along the same timeline. Most in the tech industry remain unaware of the companies concerned, unaware of the players involved, the dynamics shaping the iframes industry. So now also, I have my detractors on this point of view, even if, as many have suggested, tech is going to crush them and kill them and disrupt the Italian iframes industry and whatnot, like Apple and Google did to Nokia. Okay, fine. You can take that proposition, but nonetheless, it'd still be prudent to understand the dynamics in the industry that you intend to disrupt. So, also taking place in 2013, another watershed event took place. So we're going to give some backstory on this. Penalt pretense for this family-owned timber business launched in the early 60s, unlikely as that is. Basically a lumber yard, phenomenally successful family business lumber yard. And with success, the business grew and the family diversified into adjacent industries and eventually throughout France into a variety of different sectors. By the 90s, it had grown its portfolio of investments, and it was basically the family business was being run a bit like a private equity firm. So notably, before 2000, they had acquired shareholder dominance in the French fashion luxury goods brand, Gucci. So as the mantle of the family business was passed from father to son, Francois Henry Penalt took the reins of the family business and decided he wanted to move the firm from his father built from a diversified national conglomerate into a vertically integrated global fashion and luxury goods brand stable, flipping from 90% French domestic revenue to greater than 90% international revenue. In doing so, he liquidated most of the family's holdings. And suddenly he was left this huge pile of cash. So he takes this pile of cash and he goes on a buying spree. And he starts buying up previously independent fashion and luxury brands. In time, this strategy was proving successful, and they embarked upon a rebranding of PPR. They rebranded it Caring. So care, it's a Britain word for home. In the Brittany region of France, it's the homeland of the Penalt family. As part of this rebranding exercise, they conducted a year-long research project to educate the family and the business executives on the international fashion luxury goods market. And one of the things that came out of this research, they wished to identify the first brand touchpoint. What is the first product purchase of a buyer that goes on to be a lifelong Gucci shopper? And the answer to that question turned out to be sunglasses. This makes sense. If you think about it, Gucci sunglasses, might run $400 or $500. I've seen some crazy expensive ones that are like, $600 or $700. But if you compare that to say $2,000 pair of Gucci shoes or several $1,000 handbag, it makes sense that their sunglasses are sort of like the gateway drug to high-end fashion and luxury goods. There was just one problem. Gucci didn't make Gucci sunglasses. In fact, they weren't made by Kering at all, but by an Italian eye-frames house named Cifalo through a lucrative brand licensing contract. So Kering quickly renegotiated to pay Cifalo 90 million euros to retire the contract a couple of years early, regain control of their brand. But this wasn't the end of the story. So this contract was not unique. This kind of brand licensing deal was in fact how most of the industry is structured. Likewise, with Kering's largest competitor, LVMH, it is Moet Hennessy Louis Vuitton Holding Company. It's Louis Vuitton goes first when it's an abbreviation, and Moet Hennessy goes first when it's spelled out because the French are chic that way, and that's what they do. So likewise, the entire Italian iframes market is also structured this way. So the big five of the Italian eyewear manufacturers. Now, one of these companies is a bit unique. Marchon is technically an American company based on Long Island, and further, they're also a subsidiary of Sacramento-based VSP Global, which is the world's largest vision care insurance provider. But their manufacturing plants are all in Italy, together with Luxottica, Cifalo, Marcolin, and Dorigo, the actual Italian-based firms. So Kering's move to consolidate their iframes business in-house, roiled the Italian iframes industry and sent shockwaves through the French fashion industry. And everyone was waiting to see how LVMH was going to respond to Kering's move. And this ultimately did lead to a big restructuring of the industry. So ultimately, Kering was moving all of their brands in-house into a company that they set up, Kering Eyewear. And then their eyewear licenses were previously sort of diversified between Cifalo, Marcolin, and Luxottica. But Cifalo had most of them, and hence they were the biggest losers. So to add insult to injury, they didn't just pull all their brand license back. They also, they poached Cifalo's CEO, Roberto Vedevoto, and brought him in as the CEO of Kering Eyewear. Cifalo's stock price plummeted. So it was a big mess. LVMH ended up taking a much more conservative route. First, they took a 10% stake in Marcolin, and then over time, they became 51% owners of a jointly owned subsidiary called Thelios. That they then consolidated all of LVMH's brands. So the big winner in this was Marcolin. So now we'll take a look at the 800-pound gorilla in the room, Luxottica. Usually, whenever I talk about this subject, it's basically the only one of the companies anyone's ever heard of. So amidst this industry turmoil, Luxottica had a little bit of M&A activity of their own. They themselves were acquired by the world's largest corrective lens manufacturer, French-based Essilor. But Luxottica's founder, Leonardo Del Vecchio, remained the largest shareholder of the merged company. So he remained the chairman, and to anyone who follows the industry could be forgiven for thinking that this acquisition happened the other way around. So at this point, I've set up enough of the backstory. The most important takeaway, this logo here, BOF, that's Business of Fashion. It's an industry publication that's kind of like the Wall Street Journal of the fashion industry. It's a way of looking at it. And they did an analysis piece on the merger of these two giants, and their sort of conclusion in this article was that the two driving forces in the industry that sort of pushed this merger to happen was a combination of the restructuring of the iframes industry that Kering kicked off by bringing all their brands in-house, combined with the sort of coming industry disruption that will be introduced from the introduction of consumer smart glasses. This is kind of, think of it as sort of like the business battle that they're preparing for. To which one might ask, why does this matter? Many in the tech industry really don't feel that this is of their concern. The machinations of like the French fashion and Italian iframes industry maybe only affect a small part of the eyewear market, or people who buy luxury brands or care about fashion or whatnot, and are maybe not so relevant to the broader market that they're pursuing for consumer smart glasses. So I have kind of an anecdote that I've come up with that I respond sort of rebut that position. Okay, here's a question. Here's if you've ever taken a road trip, and I don't mean like Route 1 up and down the coast or something, like a road trip across Middle America. I want to paint a picture here in your mind. If you're on a long stretch of remote highway somewhere, you're pulling into a gas station in like rural Kansas, or a truck stop somewhere in Nebraska or something, right? You see some long haul truck driver climbing down from his cab. He's on like workman boots and some greasy build baseball cap. That son of a bitch is still going to be wearing a $200 pair of Oakleys. Maybe you think about that for a second. This is like a specimen of humanity whose the demographic of which you would assume was the least fashion conscious among us, will still spend more money on a pair of sunglasses. No electronics at all, not even corrective lenses, just sunglasses. Will spend more on those shades than he spent on the Android phone in his pocket. Okay. People care how their faces look, and they especially care how their eyes look. Most people spend a minimum of 30 minutes picking out eye frames. Many people own multiple pairs. A quarter of people that buy glasses will spend over 2.5 hours picking out a single pair of frames. Luxottica, well, this is like technically a trade secret. They're rumored to have over 10,000 SKUs. Okay. For this article, I interviewed a variety of people. Two notables. I interviewed Colin Baden, he's a former CEO of Oakley, and Nicola Belli. He's a former innovation director from Sfilo, and he was also previously a manager in the space sciences division of Ferrari. You don't have to delve into these interviews here. You can read them on the website. Too long to get into, but I'm going to leave you with this quote from Baden. And he's saying, the thing the technology companies don't understand clearly yet. So when you put on a pair of frames on your face, like those frames become your face. You know, your face becomes those eye frames. And you think, I mean, even just like language that wraps around this, you talk about, you know, looking somebody dead in the eye. If you're looking somebody dead in the eye, you're talking to them and they're wearing glasses. Their glasses are their identity. So we're going to talk about tech again for a moment. Now, I frequently hear friends in the industry will say, this isn't a big deal. You know, Apple is going to kill it. They're the design leaders in the industry. This is the conventional wisdom. Iframes are just, they're lipstick on our tech. This is easy stuff, piece of cake. Apple will pull this off easy. You know, I question this premise. Does Apple really hold any leadership in design in the tech industry? Let's have a look. In September of 2014, Apple did a sneak peek preview unveiling the Apple Watch. It wouldn't be available to purchase until the following spring. So the week prior, it was leaked that famed Australian industrial designer and former creative director of iPod watches, Mark Newson, had joined the Apple industrial design team. It was an open secret that Apple's chief design officer, Johnny Ive, had been wanting to retire for quite a few years. But his role at Apple had been elevated since Steve Jobs' passing, sort of pick up the mantle of creative visionary while Tim Cook was the steely-eyed CEO and kind of division of labor between, Jobs' personality or whatever. Johnny Ive became very, very elevated within the company after Jobs' departure predominantly. And so they were paying him boatloads of money not to retire any earlier than he did. So Ives brought in Newsom. He was supposed to be his heir apparent. This was the succession plan. So Ives could return and retire to UK full time. Not incidentally, same year, Newsom had just launched a line of iframes through his Philo. And so while venturing into wearable devices, Apple was presumably soon to introduce smart glasses. Newsom was the right industrial designer to bring in. He was clearly the guy. Now, Apple's design team under Ives remained very stable. This photograph is taken of their full industrial design team while they were attending the award show ceremony, the D&AD, Design and Art Directors Award Show in 2012. From 2000 up until the ceremony in 2012, it said that the Apple ID team had turned over only 4 or 5 people in more than a decade. It was a very stable team that had held together for a very long time. When Ives resigned in 2019, it was partially timing driven by other events that were taking place. He developed a bit of a professional rivalry with VP of Supply Chain Management, Jeff Williams. This is kind of out there in the press. You can read about it, how they butted heads for many years on product strategy. And in 2019, Ives resigned. Only days later, Williams was promoted to Chief Operating Officer. So if you look at Tim Cook and his own career, Tim Cook came out of supply chain management. He was promoted to Chief Operating Officer himself by Steve Jobs. This is his exact career path to becoming Apple CEO. It was widely perceived, and I agree with this analysis, that Jeff Williams, that basically Cook was signaling that Jeff Williams was his succession plan, Ives' nemesis. Ives resigned before this announcement went public. Okay, but when Ives departed, he didn't leave alone. Mark Newsom also departed with him as his co-founder in the new firm, Love From. Okay, so his succession plan, his heir apparent, departed with him. So Cook responded by putting Jeff Williams, the supply chain guy, in charge of the Apple Design Studio, in addition to his COO responsibilities. Leading up to the introduction of the Apple Watch, Apple hired several former fashion executives. You have Angela Arendt, from former CEO of Burberry, Patrick Pernod, former VP of Sales from Tag Heuer, which is a subsidiary of LVMH, and Paul Deneve, former CEO of Yves Saint Laurent, part of Kering's collection of brands. Angela was the last to resign, just weeks before Johnny Ive's own departure. All of them are gone. Okay, so what about that famous design team that Apple has, the one that remained intact for nearly decades under Ives? According to an expose that was done in Apple Insider back in 2019, by the year of Ives' departure, every single one of them had resigned. The entire Apple industrial design team, all of the original original members had left. And in fact, on the Apple leadership page on their website, doesn't name one single solitary executive in a design role. Not just no chief design officer, which is Johnny Ive's old title, no VP, no creative director, no nothing. And they haven't had anyone in any design or creative title on their leadership page for over 2.5 years. So I would suggest that far from being a leadership position, at Tim Cook's Apple today, in the most literal sense, design doesn't even have a seat at the table. Now, Apple is a huge company. I'm sure that among the rank and file, deep within the bowels of Norman Foster's Flying Saucer there in Cupertino, there are surely some talented designers left. But Apple's reputation for design leadership in the tech industry is now coasting on past glory. And I want to say something else. Like, I'm not some Apple basher. Right now, I'm looking at my Mac. iPhone sitting right there. I have been an Apple and Mac user since the 80s. I'm not somebody that just goes around trashing Apple. But just looking at the industry, looking at the company, wearing my analyst hat. Meanwhile, back across the pond, Leonardo Del Vecchio's ability to vote the weight of his shares was restricted in the first 3 years of the Essilor-Luxottica merger. Any CEO appointed to the combined company required approval of board members split between Essilor and Luxottica. So because they would have to have sort of like unanimous consent or this supermajority consent of this evenly split board, and Del Vecchio couldn't vote the weight of his shares for the first 3 years, he simply waited him out. He refused to approve a single CEO that the board put forward for 3 years. And they went through a kind of spell of having some co-CEOs, and then eventually got this sort of like interim CEO, which is his right-hand man, Francesco Milleri. And then just before his 3-year moratorium on voting the weight of his shares came to a conclusion, he managed to push through and get Milleri a seat on the board himself. Now that 3-year moratorium is expired, he can vote the full weight of his shares. Between the weight of his shares and Milleri alone, he basically has control of the board, not to mention he has several other key Luxottica people on that board. So in effect, Essilor acquired Luxottica, but now the founder of Luxottica is in absolute control of the combined company. Now, due to time limitations, I can't get into Del Vecchio's sort of full career bio here, but he's a really fascinating guy. He was an orphan. He was raised in a Catholic orphanage. He rose to be the wealthiest man in Italy. In addition to being the founder of Luxottica, he's also the largest shareholder in Mediobanca, Italy's largest bank. He is a force to be reckoned with. Last fall, the previous rumors of Facebook and Luxottica doing a design partnership were confirmed. Facebook is expecting to launch their first pair of smart glasses co-branded under the Luxottica Ray-Ban subsidiary. Those are supposed to come before the year is out. Facebook's Oculus, I would say, is currently the undisputed leader in VR headsets. They've now struck a partnership with Luxottica and smart glasses. I think it would be foolish to discount the combined competitive ambitions of Leonardo Del Vecchio and Mark Zuckerberg working in collaboration against Apple, and Apple with a gutted design department led by their supply chain guy. This is not a one-horse race. Now, the article is a link there on the slide. It goes into exceptional detail that I can't get into in the length of this talk. I probably run way over my time as it is. But the article goes down a bunch of different alleyways. And if this subject interests you, I would encourage you to read more there. I'll conclude with a token to these supply chain guys. Okay. I also, for this article, I interviewed several attorneys, a couple apiece in New York, in DC, and a couple of European attorneys that specialize in like trade negotiation and international trade, and on the ramifications of moving final assembly of smart glasses to Italy. Now, many tech companies are looking to lessen their supply chain dependence on China and Chinese manufacturing. Italy makes for a compelling alternative to large-scale final assembly of consumer smart glasses. And with that, you can also find me on Twitter, and I'll now see if anyone has any questions.